For budget deliberations. We'll begin with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional land of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we as beneficiaries of the treaty must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. So this evening we're going to work through a bit of an agenda. We're going to discuss the new capital and capital asset management plan, as well as a presentation from police services. So to get started this evening, we're going to go to the CFO for some opening remarks.
Thank you, everyone. I'll be very, very brief, and we can get into the budget, but appreciate that the new process that we're going through, that there may be some hiccups and some pauses along the way as we figure some things out. So just be patient with us, depending on how things go. And you know, this is a committee meeting. We're a little less formal than council meetings, and you know, we want you to understand what's in the budget and ask questions where appropriate. With that, I'll turn it over to Steve to get started.
Thanks, Gord. Thanks, Mr. Budget Chair.
Just before we do that, I'll do disclosures of pecuniary interest if there is any. Seeing none.
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. So Chatham-Kent residents had several opportunities to provide input into the 2023 draft budget. Prior to the draft budget being finalized, a survey was launched on Let's Talk CK, where we had 223 responses. The survey was open from October 7th to the 31st, and some of the results can be found in the draft budget book on pages 23 to 25, and the full results can be found on our website. The municipality had 2 community consultation sessions after the budget was delivered to garner input from the public and to answer any questions that were raised. Both of these sessions were held online and have been viewed by the public more than 980 times as of this afternoon. During tonight's meeting, we will be reviewing Chatham-Kent's capital budget, and after break, Chief Gary Conn will be presenting the Chatham-Kent Police Service budget to the Budget Committee. The capital budget is a new process this year, so I will spend the next few minutes explaining how we intend to move through the budget and what areas have an impact on the proposed tax increase. First, we'll be taking a look at the capital new budget. This is an item that had previously been brought to council on a regular Monday night meeting and has no impact on the proposed tax rate. The intent of looking at the capital new items is to review the items that are proposed to be funded in 2023 and the deferred items that are not recommended to receive funding. Therefore, the decision is about the ranking of the items and not the dollar value. If the committee does not agree with an item on the funding list, it can remove the item and have an item on the deferred list included in its spot. The deferred capital projects can be found starting on page 560 of the budget book. To be clear, there is no budget implications from any changes in priorities council makes on these items tonight. As this is our first year changing the process to be included in the budget, I will note that unfortunately the items are not all grouped together in the budget book, and I will display a listing of the items on the screen with the page that it can be found on. We will look to group the capital new items into one section moving forward. Secondly, we have the asset management plan funding business cases. This is where you will find the 1.5% capital levy and the 6% inflation on our current asset management plan. Any changes to these business cases do have an impact on the 2023 draft budget. The business cases can be found on pages 473 to 477. Lastly, we have the capital asset management plan projects. While this listing is not a comprehensive list of all the projects that the municipality plans to undertake in 2023, it does provide high-level details of the significant portion. All of these projects would be funded from the AMP reserve and therefore do not have an impact on the 2023 draft budget. By approving all of the projects, only those that require future approval of council to follow our purchasing bylaw would return before council. Those under the purchasing bylaw threshold would not need to come back in front of council for approval. So this is a listing, I think, Chairman McGregor, we can go to the deputations.
I think we have 5 deputations this evening. We'll start with, we have one in-person deputation, and I'll call Oliver Moyer up.
Mr. Chair, just from a clerking perspective, we like to remind all deputations that they have 5 minutes. We do have a timer that will be on the screen, and after the 5 minutes, we will say time. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and provide input to our 2023 municipal budget. From the front page of CK's 2035 plan website says Chatham-Kent is visionary. I've read through our development plan, our transportation master plan, our trails master plan, and other reports, and I think nothing could be more true. We are visionary. Our plans have put people and culture in the forefront of our growth of our communities throughout the development of alternative modes of transportation, and in particular, active transportation. We recognize that we have a car-dependent community and culture, and we need to change that. However, I'm concerned with the goals that we've set for ourselves are not being prioritized, as I don't see this being reflected in the draft budget. I find this concerning because with every road reconstruction, land development project, and planning decision that is centered around the convenience of cars is an opportunity lost to make living in Chatham-Kent safer, more affordable, and accessible. That said, I do want to recognize the incredible progress on behalf of the Trails Committee that have made progress so far. I've had the pleasure to meet them earlier today. So the reason I'm here tonight is to ask Council to consider adding a new permanent full-time position at the municipality for a dedicated active transportation coordinator. Affordability, community well-being, physical health, sustainability, and growth. These are all issues that we're working to improve, and I believe active transportation is in the center of it all. In speaking today, I hope I also remind us of some of the reasons why we want to transform our communities from car-centric to human-centric, as described in our growth plan. So first, the fastest growing age group in Chatham-Kent is the 75 and older, expected to increase from 10 to 22% over the next 24 years. Developing well-connected, human-centric active transportation networks in all of our communities will be critically important for the health, well-being, and independence of everyone, but in particular the elderly. It allows people to stay connected to their communities, provide for themselves, and stay active for longer. It's often associated that the loss of a driver's license is loss of independence, but it shouldn't be. So while the older population is increasing, the population age 45 and below is projected to decrease, which is a trend I understand Chatham-Kent has struggled with in the past. The younger generation see that car dependency is an issue, and places with strong active transportation network help attract this cohort. I'm a new father to a beautiful baby girl named Ren here with us tonight, and she's the real reason I'm speaking today. The community I want for her is one where she can safely learn independence by riding her bike to school, to her friend's house, and to school programs. Now, she's not even 10 months old yet, but if she was of age today, I can't in good faith say that I could let her do that. Like 70% of CK's young adult population, we moved here because of family connections. I strongly believe that this can change, and we can make CK a place sought out to raise a family for its safe, accessible, active transportation network. So the young or elderly, everybody struggles with affordability, especially today. The Canadian Automotive Association estimates that the cost of owning a car is between $9,000 and $12,000 a year. Imagine if a family had the freedom to choose to own maybe only one car or even no cars. That money saved for families would be transformative. It's money that can be directly reinvested into those families and their local economies. This can become the reality by investing in safe, convenient, and accessible active transportation. My last point is about freedom. Car-centric places require a person to own a car to participate in a society. I know this sounds harsh, but think of the last time you drove down St. Clair. Where were the people on bikes supposed to ride? Legally, not on the sidewalks. Safely, not on the roads either. So yeah, this is one of Chatham's most commercial areas. If you can't afford a car, these places are nearly off limits. Even the simplest task of buying a milk requires many to take a car, which I think needs to change. So realizing our plan and reducing car dependency won't happen overnight, but we owe it to the folks of CK to give them the freedom to not own a car and be able to participate in society. So all these reasons, and I haven't even mentioned the physical health benefits or environmental benefits, which I think speaks for themselves, so I won't go into them. The need for a safe, accessible, convenient, active transportation network is integral to the many aspects of our health, of our society and community, and is a cornerstone to our development plans. So I reiterate, I ask Council to modify the 2023 municipal budget and establish a permanent full-time active transportation coordinator who has allowed meaningful input across the planning department and infrastructure and engineering department to jumpstart our transition to a human-centric community.
That is time, sir.
Thank you. And now we'll go to our deputations that were submitted to be read.
Thank you. So the first deputation that we have was submitted by Josh Laird. Good evening. I'm writing to you about my concerns with the draft budget, which outlines a drastic hike in taxes of 6.35%. In reading the article online, I found many concerns with the approach that you are taking. Much of your article is related to inflation and the cost increases that you're facing. As stated by Gord Quinton, as our residents continue to deal with inflation levels not seen in 40 years, municipal services are also facing those same pressures, with even higher inflation on infrastructure-related expenses. Quinton went on to say, I am pleased to say the draft 2023 budget is being presented at a rate lower than the current rate of inflation. Inflation in Canada peaked in June 2022 at 9.1%. Inflation in Canada as of December 2022 was 6.5%. At this rate, inflation is on pace to be 4.28% by June 2023 and 2.06% by December 2023. By introducing a tax hike of this magnitude, you are not considering where inflation is headed. The Bank of Canada has signaled more rises in interest rates through Q1 and Q2 of 2023, with the sole purpose of taming inflation. Is Council prepared to reduce the rate of taxes at the same rate of inflation cooling throughout the year? Many indicators are pointing to a recession coming for Canada beginning most likely in summer of 2023. With a recession likely on the way, this will lead to job losses and layoffs, which coupled with increased interest rates will make everyone's lives that much less affordable. Is Council considering the difficulties their residents are going to face when preparing their budgets for this year? I would strongly recommend minimizing your infrastructure plans and lowering the tax hikes. By delaying any unnecessary infrastructure plans to 2024, rates will be lower, loans less costly, and inflation will hopefully be mostly behind us. Lastly, in regards to inflation, could you please explain how you're facing even higher inflation on infrastructure-related expenses than we are as residents? I work in construction, and most of the items that were extremely costly, such as steel, have fallen by as much as 50%. While food prices, natural gas, oil, and many other items that residents rely on to survive remain inflated, I would like to further understand how you are facing even higher inflation than we are. If you've lived in Chatham-Kent your whole life, you may not be aware of how astronomical our property taxes are here. The taxes that we already pay are so far above any other local community, it is very concerning to see the steady pace that Council continues to increase taxes by. Once again, you are leading the way by raising taxes higher than any other local Ontario community. The below are a few examples of taxes being raised in 2023. London 2.9%, Kitchener 4.8%, Barrie 4.93%, Windsor 5.2%, and Toronto 5.5%. On average, you are raising our taxes by almost 2% more than the above cities. I hope that you consider the people of Chatham-Kent and the difficulties they are going to face in 2023 when preparing your budget. Sincerely, Josh Laird. Next is a deputation sent in by Marley Robinson. The mayor was interviewed yesterday, January 12th, by media across Chatham-Kent regarding the good news that Chatham is the top city in Canada for U-Haul moves. Great news. On CBC Radio 1, the mayor was asked what attracted these welcome new residents and taxpayers. He cited comparatively low housing prices and jobs, but emphasized the importance of top quality opportunities in the arts. He rightly mentioned the new initiative to commission public art. He also highlighted exciting community events being organized by volunteers and clubs across Chatham-Kent. Having acknowledged that the arts not only attract, but also keep new and longtime residents, I hope Council and Administration will now support this vital part of our community. In the budget pie chart, culture is a slice so small it's almost invisible. We, the taxpayers, are painfully aware that rising prices, impacts of Bill 23, and a vast infrastructure will likely affect our 2023 property taxes. We know that the Budget Committee will do all that they can to keep tax increases as small as possible. However, please consider growing the culture slice of the pie. Specifically, please consider giving full support to Art Space, the art gallery, gift shop, visual art hub at 165 King Street West in Chatham. Art Space exhibits work by artists, painters, sculptors, photographers, potters, jewelers, etc., in or from Chatham-Kent. Many of these artists are in mid-career and benefit from a supportive educational approach by staff. Funding for Art Space comes from exhibiting artists, annual membership fees, from a percentage of sales of artwork, fundraising by staff, and volunteers, plus a small annual grant from the municipality. Sadly, the combination of this funding does not pay for full-time properly paid staff. This means that Thames Art Gallery staff sometimes fill in, or the gallery needs to close for a day or two or more. Municipal regulations prevent volunteers from working at the gallery unless a staff person is present. My request is for a commitment by the municipality for art space funding to cover basic rent and staffing. There are no frills at Art Space, but other expenses for openings, artist talks, school activities, etc. can be covered by fundraising. We are talking about under $75,000 on an annual basis, less than a sliver in the budget. Please help support local artists, culture, tourism, small businesses, and quality of life for all our taxpayers, both old and new. Fund Art Space. Thank you for your consideration. Marley Robinson. Third, we have a deputation submitted by Vicki McFarland. I'd like to start by saying that after moving to London from Chatham-Kent due to work commitments in 2011, I am excited and pleased to have moved back to the area in 2019. I am also pleased to have connected to a vibrant and large artistic community in the area, and pleased to have heard that our mayor, council, and administration shares how important this community is to attract and keeping new growth in the area. The arts, however, do only take a sliver of the budget for this energetic and growing community. With the increasing of costs across the board, I am concerned that instead of increasing support, we could find funding to the arts diminishing. I would humbly request that you consider not only continued support, but increasing support to Art Space. The funding received from the municipality is what keeps this gallery open. For those not familiar with the facility, it supports the work of starting, emerging, and professional artists alike. Many rely on this small stage as their only mechanism to show their work. Even with funding from annual fees, sales, fundraising, and the municipality, the gallery struggles to stay open, often understaffed and having to limit their hours. Please continue to support the arts through funding of Art Space. Respectfully, I would ask that you also consider an increase in the budget for this facility to cover the basic costs of rent and full-time staff. Let's continue to grow this vibrant and vital part of our community that starts from the very young and continues through a lifetime and supports our downtown core. Sincerely, Vicki McFarland. And lastly, a deputation sent in by Michelle Gonzalez. Hello, I've been a citizen of Chatham since 1968. I currently own a commercial cleaning company and have no money put aside. Why, you ask? Because I have been trying to make sure that my mom and daughter have food on the table. Since the federal government would rather help foreign countries rather than their own, which I might add is falling apart, there are more homeless people in Chatham now than I have ever seen, which I give money to as well. I'm appalled at how the government is spending our tax dollars. My daughter has an amazing job and makes reasonable money, but can't afford bills, rent, and groceries most months because of inflation. I can't for the life of me understand how this tax increase you are suggesting will help us working class or low income out in these times. Let's try and figure out a solution for lowering rent and helping the homeless and veterans. I'm not sure if Chatham-Kent can can go after the federal government to stop this insane power we have in Parliament right now, but it would be a good start to a better future for my children and grandkids. Over the last year, I have lost contracts because my clients' businesses are cutting back on their expenses due to a slow economy, which means I am earning half as much as I did last year. Explore alternatives to a tax hike in 2023, or I fear there will be more homeless in our community. Thank you, Michelle Gonzalez. And that is all of them.
Thank you. We'll begin going through the agenda with the capital budget, capital new.
So on the screen we have right here are all of the items that are recommended within the budget book for the capital funding that total up to $7.766 million. On the far left is the page that you can find that project on. So these are the ones that we talked about have no impact on the tax this year. However, it's a matter of ranking.
Do you have any questions about any of these items or about the capital new budget in general? We'll give you lots of time to flick through the book. Councillor Finn?
Just one with regards to item 510 or page number 510. Has there been any look into the provincial government with regards to funding since it's mandated?
Thank you. This was for the Next Gen 911. Yes, so there has been a provincial announcement of $208 million for all of Ontario, which for all the 911 centers across Ontario. So it gets the math is pretty slim for Chatham-Kent, but to be paid sometime over the next 3 years, and they've opened application period number 1, and our police, along with our IT staff, have submitted an application for funding. We won't hear for approximately the end of February is when we'll hear whether we received funding for this year, but it is just one-time funding, $208 million across the province. So just a reminder to council that we're funding this one-time cost in the capital budget over 2 years. So you'll see the $1.5 million in this year's column, but also additional $1,464,000 in next year's column as well. So if we do get good news on that grant request, it basically will lower that 2024 request.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, line 511 there, in regards to, it makes reference to the Talbot Trail EA. Does our decision to abandon that second phase alter that number at all?
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. Thank you for the question. So no, that 2.2 is still required to kind of move forward with that first phase, even following the new direction from council. So that's the improvements required to Stevenson, Coatsworth, and Second Concession Road there with the recommended solution to widen the road and make that the new Talbot Trail.
Okay, and just a more general follow-up, maybe for the people watching at home. If we pull something out of this, does that lower our tax impact, or does that just move something from the deferred list up?
Thanks, Mr. Budget Chair. If you were to remove an item from this list, it would pull up an item from the deferred list. There is no change in the tax impact by making any changes on this.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move along to the capital AMP. Councillor Sakachi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, Councillor Sakachi, make the motion that the business case construction index inflation on the capital life cycle be changed from 6% inflation at 4.06.40 million to 4% inflation. You have the exact numbers. You would just want to put them up there, Gord, for a cost savings of $1,355,800.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Pinsno? Go ahead, Councillor Sakachi.
So I'm kind of, looked through the budget book and online here for the last several weeks, and to be honest, I'm finding a very challenging aspect to find cuts and savings in this budget. I know that our staff have done a really good job this year at kind of removing a lot of the fluff. But that said, my hope is kind of towards what the, deputation states, is that we don't see as much significant rise in inflation. I do think if we cut this further than the 4%, I do think in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to put ourselves in a very challenging situation. I don't think in, the next 2 or 3 years, if we're presented with the same type of budget, that we're going to be able to find a lot of cost savings, and this will actually increase it if things go kind of south. So I think that, in speaking with staff, this is a number that might not be perfect, but they are at least palatable with. And I think that all council that has had a chance to go through in detail knows it's going to be a very challenging budget. So this is a significant cost savings with not kicking the can too far down the road to cost us more significant challenges down the way.
Councillor Crew?
I'm just could we put the motion up? Like, I can't read any of that, any of those, that's just a thank you. But those sheets, can't see them at all. It's frustrating, to say the least, but thank you.
Any other questions about Councillor Sakachi's motion? Councillor Thompson?
Just so everybody understands, what does this cause, say, if inflation is more than 4%? What are we actually deciding to do?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So by cutting, you're basically cutting approximately just over $1.3 million of funding out of what engineering and the team will be able to implement in the next year on any of our life cycle projects. So whether it's roads, bridges, it's lowering what's available to it. And maybe I'll just, while I got the floor, sort of discuss how we came up with the 6% just for a second. This was determined, remember the timeline. I came to council with this report back in June, where we had no idea where inflation was headed, but we knew it was going up, and that the costs at that point in time of for example, resurfacing roads had gone up 25%, and like in one of the deputations today, everything was out of control at that time. So in fact, probably it was EMT as a group decision to come to that 6% sort of as a cap. But we could have asked for 10% almost the way we were feeling at that time and what was coming through. If we averaged through all the classes, we did come to a estimate at 6%. But since then, particularly in the last 3 months, a lot of the supply chain issues have normalized, and inflation capped, the regular CPI capped at 6.8%, and now is at 6.1%. And even the Bank of Canada announcement yesterday when they were raising interest rates, it's to further put a damper on inflation. So taking a third of the request off we hope we'll have, if this is council's wish tonight, we hope it will have less of an effect than what we worried about in June when we came up with the 6%. That,
Okay, but it is still an infrastructure cut, right?
definitely, it's 1.3 million and change less of funds available for infrastructure.
So would this move something off of the capital list into the deferred list, or is this going to be less road paving?
So this is more for the life cycle asset management plan program, so it'd be the less kilometers of roads or one less bridge fixed or whatever,
Okay, thank
those
you.
types of things. And, you know, we have all types of infrastructure in Chatham-Kent. I always use the roads and bridge examples because that is 75% of the money does go to those two categories. But we do have, you know, many, whether we get into trails or buildings or our housing assets, like we have a lot of assets, others, but it is just roads and bridges that take 75% of those funds, well, in storm sewers.
Councillor Story?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to build a bit on Councillor Thompson's question, I'd like to know what we're losing with that percentage if we cut that. Do we know exactly what that is tonight, or is that something you come back to us for at a later date?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So what engineering does, we approve the budget, and then they'll bring back an operating plan of what they can do with that budget. For example, on road paving, there's often contingency. Road pavings are a very interesting thing that the price does change month to month, depending on where the price of oil is on the day. So they always do have a contingency list of things, you know, if price of oil drops, they hope to get to them. But if price of oil rises through the summer, well, then we'll do less. And a cut such as this just knocks off a few more kilometers of roads or a bridge. Mr. Cheever could probably add some more comments to that.
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. So I agree with Gord's comments. So based on kind of our purchasing policy and the next steps following budget approval, when we put out our road contract, we put out our various bridge contracts or our storm sewer contracts or whatever infrastructure contract, we base the estimates on previous years and kind of on industry standards and coming up with our estimates. And then when it comes back what the actual cost is, and then we can evaluate what the inflation impact was. And that's when we were talking about, we were seeing 25% on our roads last year. We saw 18% on some of our bridge projects last year, and kind of a range between the 15 to kind of 30% mark. So then at that time, we'll be able to inform council, what does this mean? What does this represent? Does it mean we're doing less kilometers of road this year? Are we doing one less bridge this year as a result? So really, once we kind of get into the actual specifics of each individual project that we do have planned, then we'll be able to, when we come back to council, inform council and the public of what was impacted as a result of this cut.
Thank you. And that list, we'll still need to get to that infrastructure work eventually, correct?
That's correct. Definitely with regards to our asset management plan and kind of our current level of funding, we're in need of increased funding and support towards our asset management plan. So and that includes inflation to go towards it, what we are seeing in the market and in the world right now. This all just kind of supports our ever-aging infrastructure and our challenge to kind of keep up and maintain certain levels of service.
Pay me now, pay me later. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. So if we cut 1.3, just in a very general kind of way, what's the, departmental budget? Like, what would this represent percentage-wise as a reduction to this category? I call it public works, but whatever. But you know what I mean? If we're talking about cutting 1.3 from what? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's currently $62 million of funding in the 2022 final budget for assets. So as a comparison, Just a second here.
If anybody can do the math, Corey.
It is about 2%.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councillor Doyle?
Thank you, Speaker. I personally like the idea. I had in my notes to make it a little bit lower than that, just with inflation coming down. I think it's a great idea, especially if inflation is coming down, then I don't know if we'll need the 6%, hopefully, so it might not have as big of impact as it would have back in June. So I fully support this. I think it's a great idea.
Mayor Caniff?
So just to I think just for the public listening, to clarify this number. So back in 2022, we spent 60-something million dollars. This 6% inflation allows us to do based on a forecasted inflation number. As Mr. T-Bear pointed out, he doesn't know when we go out in the summertime or spring exactly what this is going to be. So this, in theory, what this is meant to do based on a forecasted 6% is to allow us to pay for the exact same things we did in 2022. So if we paved 30 kilometers of road, we paved 30 kilometers of road. If we fix 4 bridges, all other things being equal, that's what we're able to do. So this is an estimate. So as Councillor Sakachi is saying, well, given we don't know for sure what this number is, and we've assumed it's going to be 6% in 2023, he's saying 4%. So to me, this is a kind of a logical thing given what our trending is for regarding inflation. So I think it's a reasonable reduction to the budget, and it'll help get us, well, it certainly will get the budget number down. Thank you.
And if you're looking for this item in the budget book, just a reminder, it's on 473. So if you're looking for the actual note. Any other questions before we go back to Councillor Sakachi? Seeing none, Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why I wanted to come back to me is Mayor Caniff actually just touched on some of my some of my comments, but, Mr. Quinton, how I'm looking at the budget right now, and, correct me if I'm wrong by kind of making these hypotheses, though, by going through it, most of the full-time positions, I know, not without going into the weeds, are related to provincial requirements or provincially funded. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, the majority, yes.
And majority of the budget is basically inflationary or life cycle and asset management. Is that correct?
Correct.
I said to myself and to my colleagues this year that I have made significant cuts to infrastructure, in the last 4 budgets that I've been involved in, and that's not my goal, coming to the table this year. I don't look at it as a cut. I look at it as hopefully, with the way things are forecasting, if you do some reading, it looks like that we're going to get to around that 4% inflation rate again. Not to say that we are, but it looks like. So if can I make the assumption that really we are still putting 4% more in than we would have before? So it's not like we're actually cutting. We're just cutting almost like a fictional number we were guessing. So it's not actually a projects that may not get done, because if it goes back to 4%, really there's no cutting to infrastructure whatsoever. Is that a fair way to put it, if it stays at 3 or 4%?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So we're adding 2,711,600 for the inflation part. It won't be until we actually go out to tender for some of these projects, whether we know how far back down to earth some of these quotes have come. Everything skyrocketed, as Mr. T-Bear said last year, but we do expect, price of steel, price of lumber, some things have fallen back down. Oil sort of sticking up there a little bit, but it's come back down off the highs. And so I won't be able to answer whether this was enough until we actually see the tenders come in and see if there's an additional increase over last year or whether they actually drop. And what I say drop because, like Mr. Cheever said, if we take the asphalt as example, it went up a full 25%, which, drastic. Even if it were to drop 5% less costs this year than it was last year, it's still a 20% increase over what we budgeted in 2022. So, but yes, I think what you said is exactly I support what you're saying is this still gives us some new funds and we'll see where it lies and be able to come back with some of those results before the next year's budget.
Thanks, and through you, Mr. Chair, just want to, kind of reiterate my comments. In going through this budget book, unless we address infrastructure spending, or we cut services, I don't see a lot of significant places in this budget to make, cuts, and, going through it, even on day one, I'm already kind of, having a challenging time, so hopefully this is supported, because I don't see any other substantial way that we're going to get a number without drastically cutting service, or, life cycle and assets, and I don't want to go down the list of starting to pick off rural communities for the assets they have in their communities to save $1 now here at the cost of our community. So hopefully I have council support on this one. I know it is a very challenging one to support, but I think it's one of the only options that we do have.
Thank you. We'll also go to the phones. Councillor McGregor has a question.
Thank you, through the chair. My question is, if this didn't change and inflation went down, would we see savings come back in, say, through quarterly tax payments later on in the year to citizens? And that might be a silly question, but I'm just trying to understand that if it remained at 6 and inflation was only 4, would our citizens reap the benefit of the lower inflation moving forward without making a change to that suggested one right now?
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. So if life cycle, if the inflation on the asset management plan came in lower than budget, the intent would be to do more projects and not to actually give a refund, so to say, back to the residents. But with that being said, inflation, using the example of road paving, is up 25%. So even with a 4%, even if it does come down some, we're still probably shy of what that overall inflationary amount on the asset management plan would be. However, if for some reason it did come down, like I said, we would actually look to do more projects.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Anderson? Oh, you're good. Any other questions related to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote.
Councillor Carmen McGregor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
We'll continue through the capital AMP. Any other items of interest, related motions? Give you a moment to flick through the book. As a reminder, during budget deliberations, we can return to any items of interest. So if there's something related to this tab that comes up in the next couple days when you're looking at it, we can return and discuss that again. So seeing no other hands up right now, we would be having a break before the police presentation, but I think we've got the steam to move right into it. So we will begin with the presentation from Chief Khan. if anyone's looking to follow along, the police budget starts on page 429 of the budget book.
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. And good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment and publicly thank those who assisted me in drafting this year's budget. Our emergency communications supervisor, Mr. Brian French, who was instrumental in putting together this PowerPoint, as well as our CFO, Mr. Gord Quentin, Budget Director Stephen Brown, Budget Analyst Chris Heaton, Director of Financial Services Matt Torrance, as well as our own Financial Coordinator, Ms. Kelly Veldboom. Much appreciated, and thank you all. This year again is unprecedented, and I know council has a very difficult and challenging budget ahead. As a result, my overall presentation this evening will take a look at some quick facts surrounding our police service, occurrences per year, operational expenses, cop-to-pop ratio, cost per capita, some service level enhancements, and briefly look at some of our police comparator budgets for this year. I believe and hope you will find this presentation both informative and interesting, and obviously at the end of the presentation I will field any of your questions. This works. There we go. So let's start with a quick overview of our service containing some quick facts and figures. We are the 17th largest police service in Ontario, and there are approximately 44 municipal police services and 1 provincial OPP. We have 169 sworn officers, 65 civilian support staff, giving us a total of 234 full-time employees. Augmenting those 234 full-time employees are an additional 24 auxiliary members as well. We serve approximately 109,000 citizens and 23 communities comprising the 5th largest municipal geographical area in the province. We patrol close to 2,500 square kilometers and 3,400 kilometers of roadway, which, as you know, provides our police service with some additional challenges given the immense area we have to patrol. This is very similar to the challenges associated to our population density per square kilometer. As you can appreciate, there is a direct correlation with the costs associated to gas, wear and tear, life cycle equipment, especially patrol vehicles, as opposed to some of our comparators such as Guelph, Barrie, Brantford, and Kingston, who have far less geographical areas to patrol. Last year, we responded to just over 73,000 occurrences, which is relatively the same from 2021, where we responded to just over 74,000 calls for service. So on average, we respond to 200 calls for service per day, or approximately 8.5 to 9 calls for service per hour. This slide provides just a real quick shot of our organizational chart. As you can see, the CKPS is operationally broken into 3 branches, and I'll start at the very top. In that yellow box, that is the Chatham-Kent Police Services Board. We have a 5-member board as per the Police Services Act. 2 of those are provincial appointees, 2 of those are municipal appointees, and 1 is municipal at-large appointee. Underneath the Police Services Board is that blue box, and that blue box we refer to as the Office of the Chief. The Office of the Chief contains obviously myself and the Deputy Chief, right over here to my left, Deputy Chief Kirk Early. Underneath the blue box, you'll see some red boxes. Those red boxes are our branches, and they are overseen by inspectors. So we have the Community Patrol Branch, which is our largest branch. Those are those frontline officers that you see on the road day to day. Our Operational Support Branch and our Administrative Support Branch. Contained within each one of those branches falls a plethora of specialty units, sections, and teams. And I'm not going to delve into each one. However, I will add these units are overseen by staff sergeants and sergeants, which are primarily our supervisor and middle management ranks. So, how are our officers deployed? Certainly throughout such a large geographical area. Well, this slide depicts our new deployment model, which has 3 districts. We refer to them as the North, Central, and South, along with 14 zones or patrol beats. Prior to this, we had a model which had 4 districts with 17 zones or patrol beats. Suffice it to say, some of these zones would receive numerous calls for service, while others none. As a result, we conducted a call volume and call severity analysis, as well as a population demographics and response time analysis for our municipality. Subsequently, we were able to go down 1 district and 3 zones. But more importantly, we were able to align the zones to evenly distribute our resources dependent upon the variables I just mentioned, such as calls for service, call severity, and also municipal demographics. When I'm saying municipal demographics, I'm talking about, for example, the central zone right in the middle, which is basically Chatham proper and the immediate surrounding rural area. 65% of our calls for service come out of that district alone. So these graphs break down the total amount of police-related calls we respond to on an annual basis. Over the last 23, 24 years there, you can see the least amount of calls we did was back in 2000. And actually, if we go back to our inception, 1998, 1999, we were actually below 38,259 as depicted in 2000. But more recently, obviously over the past few years, that has escalated, has increased significantly to where we're at just now, which is just under 75,000 calls for service. We have now nearly doubled our calls for service, certainly in comparison to the past 24 years. There was a time, 2006, 2007, and at our inception, where we had 2 deputy chiefs, 5 inspectors, 236 full-time employees while responding to, on average, 45,000 calls for service at that time. So we've been able to capture efficiencies, be more effective, while still responding to almost double the amount of calls we historically have in the past. As you can see, there was a decreased trend from 2008 to 2013, but over the last 8 years there has been an increase, and it appears this trend, at least I hope anyway, has plateaued over the past 3 years, but I suspect we will continue to see a more gradual increase into the future. And that's primarily due to what I refer to as mission creep, but also the implementation of our MDTs, mobile data terminals. It's easier for police officers to generate calls right from their office, which is really their cruiser. Mission creep. When I talk about mission creep, what I'm referring to there is the expansion of our duties into other social service areas which were historically and traditionally not our mandate. Actually, only, and I know a lot of people are shocked when I present these stats, but every year we confirm it and we're right around the same number. Only about 20% of our incidents involve crime. The other 80% deal with complex social disorders or social issues, or what I like to refer to as social inequities. We are dealing with far more people suffering from mental health, addictions, emotional violence, homelessness, poverty, and the list goes on. To illustrate this point, when we created our mobile crisis team, which specifically partners a officer who is trained to deal with people who are suffering from mental health. They are partnered with a crisis registered nurse from CKPH. When we started that unit back in 2006, we responded to 405 mental health calls for service. 10 years later, in 2016, it more than doubled. We responded to 843. More recently, 2019, 1,191. 2020, 1,467. And 22, we've seen it respond back to pre-COVID days. Last year, we responded to just shy of 1,200, 1,181 mental health calls for service. Historically, we've seen a 10% increase each year since 2006. However, as I already indicated, 2020 and 2021, we responded to over 1,400. We attribute that primarily due to COVID and the fact that the first few months, other social services who usually assist us were working from home, which further reduced their services. However, 2022 saw the complete return of those other social services, and our calls for service have returned to pre-COVID numbers. Couple that with the challenges associated to a national opioid crisis, which has resulted in 27 opioid-related deaths, up from 19 in 2021, and 43 suspect drug-related deaths overall in Chatham-Kent for 2022. I just want to say a special thanks to Dr. Redike for connecting me with Miss Laura Zettler from Chatham-Kent Health, who provided us with those statistics. Continuing on, we have the Wheatley explosion, which we are still dealing with. And equally as critical, staffing issues within our service and our profession as a whole, as well as membership suffering from operational stress injuries. One can appreciate just how stretched our resources truly are. That being said, we are hoping that further assistance from our first strategy, expansion of our community mobilization unit, implementation of our CCTV, what did we call that project? Bird's Eye View project. Creation of our EDIC, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator. That position is being currently filled by Sergeant Lynette Hodder. Our bike patrol unit, our mobile crisis team service enhancement, the implementation of our provincially mandated community safety and well-being plan, and the development of a coordinator for that position, along with improved counseling and mental wellness benefits for both our members and their dependents, will assist in mitigating some of these complex social trends going forward into 2023 and hopefully beyond. This is a breakdown of our operating expenses for the entire organization. And as you can see, 90% of our operating budget goes towards salaries, wages, and benefits, which leaves very little room for other expenses, including, as depicted in the slide, fleet, building, and administrative costs, with the lowest at only 4% remaining for operational expenses. And let me assure members of council that that 4% can be absorbed fairly quickly if we have a couple major crimes such as a homicide or an attempt homicide. That being said, 2022 saw once again a high number of homicides. We had 4 with 3 attempt homicides for our municipality, as opposed to 2021 where we had 4 homicides but actually 6 attempt homicides. Thankfully, in each of these very complex and in some cases multi-jurisdictional, an arrest or multiple arrests were made in a timely fashion with multiple charges ranging from first and second degree murder to manslaughter and attempt murder. These complex cases are what we refer to as threshold offenses, requiring extensive investigation, major case management, and as a result, There's no way around it. They incur overtime. I also put a note up there on that slide. A reduction of 1% of our budget is a cut of 3 to almost 4 additional officers. Having said that, over the next few slides, you're going to see that our officer to population ratio and our overall police budget are either better or within equivalent proportionate ranges in comparison to our comparators throughout the entire province. I'll just bring up the next slide. There we go. This slide basically takes a look at the amount of officers per 100,000 people ratio, sometimes referred to as our cop to pop ratio. The national level is 100, and as you can see, right up at the very top, Canada, is 183 officers, and the provincial is 174 officers for every 100,000 people. As you can see, we are well below both those averages, and there was really only one police service, Guelph, who had a smaller ratio than us. There are certainly a few services which are very close to us, as depicted in the slide, Sudbury, Kingston, Barrie as well. At the other end of the spectrum, you have Thunder Bay and Brantford, who are also two of our comparators, and Windsor, who have far more police officers at 188 and 200 per 100,000 people, and as a result, the costs associated to those additional officers. There's advantages and disadvantages, right? More officers, it's pretty self-explanatory as to what the advantages are. The disadvantages is that you have the costs associated to those additional officers. Because remember, 90% of our budget goes towards our salaries and our benefits. This slide depicts the police cost per capita associated to some of our comparators. Basically, what people per person pay towards the police budget in their respective municipalities. These stats were obtained from the 2022 BMA municipal study. Group average for our comparators is $374, as depicted by the gray bar in the slide. Ours is $284, or $90 per person less than the average. We are therefore well below the group average, and in fact, the lowest in regards to police cost per capita in our province. In respect to this slide, we have all heard from our administration, certainly from Mr. Gord Quentin, the challenges related to sustaining the infrastructure associated to such a large geographical area and low population density, which is currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, 44 people per square kilometer. I think I'm correct with that, Steve. Thanks. Trust me when I say this is all true. Certainly in policing, when we talk about life cycling vehicles, fuel, wear and tear associated to said vehicles, amount of area to patrol, and having ample coverage in regards to response times. But I think you can see that the costs associated, to us anyway, at $14,000 per square kilometer is very efficient in comparison to some of our comparators. I would particularly draw council's attention to both Thunder Bay and Sudbury, as the populations are relatively similar, and both those services provide a blend of both urban and rural, much like we do in respect to policing. Yet the cost per square kilometer is much higher. I will preface this slide with the fact that, as per the Ontario Police Services Act, and that is the legislation which governs policing in our province, in establishing an overall budget for the Police Services Board, Council does not have the authority to approve or disapprove specific items in the estimate. So basically, you cannot go line by line. And trust me, you would not want to go line by line. Our budget contains 850 budgetary lines, which many of them have further drop-down menus, which allow you to delve even deeper, providing even more budgetary lines. However, what this slide does is it does provide a high-altitude, succinct overview of the police budget containing 9 lines and breaking down our direct cost provisions and other police service items, including offsetting revenues. So when we take a look at our budgetary lines, we have a total of almost 1.5 million in expenditure increases, which is 192,000, approximately 192,000 less than last year. This includes 572,000 associated to direct cost provisions, such as collective agreement benefit increases, corporate provisions, insurance, fleet, and facilities. And I have very little discretionary authority in any of those first 6 lines that you see up there, members of council. Those budgetary lines are provided us, or to us, by Gord Quinton and his team. So the municipality provides us with those first 6 lines. Plus $892,889 in collective agreement ratified new contract raises, which is contained in budgetary line number 7 there, which went from 1.85% in 2016 through to 2020 to 2.63% for the first 3 years of this new 5-year contract, which goes from 2021 until December 31st, 2025. And it's broken down to 2% for the last 2 years, providing us an overall average for the total of the 5 years of this new collective agreement of 2.38%. And I would like to just take this opportunity briefly to thank certainly our board members, associations, both the Junior Association and Senior Officers Association, and Deputy Chief Kirk Early, in negotiating and ratifying 2 5-year contracts back to back. And I can tell you, the negotiations, some of them went as long as 8 months. We started in April, March, and wrapped up in October. But we're able to ratify 2 collective agreements, both the juniors and seniors. So continuing back with the budgetary lines there, minus the 337,500 in offsetting supplementaries, which is broken down by the increase of, that's budgetary line number 8 there, the increase of 37,500 in additional funding to our community safety and policing grant, and another in budgetary line number 9, another 300,000 of funding from the Ontario Police College Secondment Program. This ultimately provides us a total 2023 police budget of just over $35 million, which is a 3.30% increase to last year's budget and has a 0.64% tax impact. So, during these difficult and challenging times, while providing one of the lowest budgets both municipally and provincially, what has and what are the Chatham-Kent Police Service still able to provide to our citizens for service level enhancements? And I might add, at no additional cost to the taxpayer. In this regard, I would refer to our new strategic plan, which runs from 2021 through to 2024. I will just briefly touch on some of these initiatives on the slide in front of you. And they include, I'll start at the top, an additional officer to our community mobilization unit. So originally, our community mobilization unit had 1 sergeant and 2 constables. We now have 1 sergeant, 3 constables, a constable assigned to each district, the central, north, and south districts. Constable Kevin Brown is in the South District. Central District is Constable Jen Jacobson, thank you. And in the North is Marlene McLennan. And we have a new sergeant in that unit as well, Renee Cowell. The Community Mobilization Unit, as some of you may recall, was originally established to assist our frontline with those non-criminal complex social issues through a holistic approach involving community partners and really tackling the root causes associated to our community social disorders. Those calls have increased, and I believe everyone here would agree the additional officer assigned to this unit is certainly warranted. We just recently created and selected a detective constable to attend the CPC, Canadian Police College, for the polygraph examiner's course, so polygraphist. This device will assist us immensely in determining whether a subject is being truthful or deceptive. Certainly for more of our egregious or violent offenses, while eliminating potential suspects or even persons of interest. It is a great investigative tool. However, historically, we have always had to contract out to request another service for assistance in this regard. So we would normally reach out to either London, Windsor, or the OPP. Our municipal community safety and well-being plan that addresses the 3 priority areas of focus for our community, which deal with community awareness and integration as number 1, number 2, mental health and substance use, and finally, number 3, housing and homelessness, has just created a drug steering committee and is developing, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Crew, a municipal encampment protocol as well. Yes. Right under that, we have our BPU, or Bike Patrol Unit, which has increased its numbers with an additional officer and 7 new auxiliaries, which will further increase police visibility in the various downtown cores throughout our entire municipality. On the same note, our auxiliary unit just swore in an additional 5 new auxiliary officers, increasing the overall unit size. Basically, we went from 19 to 24 auxiliary members. Our newly created EDIC, Equity Diversity Coordinator, filled by Sergeant Lynette Harder, has further enhanced our reputation and services by augmenting our police chaplaincy unit with 2 Indigenous elders. So 1 from Meridiantown and 1 from Walpole. Our CCTV pilot project for the downtown Chatham area will be going live this summer with 3 to 4 cameras. Some of you may have already seen the junction boxes right at the corner of 3rd and King, and the other one is at the corner of 5th and King. Next Generation 911, Backup Communication Center, and our radio system revitalization projects are all underway, and I will not elaborate too much on these initiatives, as I know we have provided council with very informative presentations, and more information and presentations will be forthcoming on those particular projects. I would add, I'm going to add, that these monumental changes, certainly in respect to NG 911, Backup Communication Center, and our radio system revitalization projects, they're monumental changes. And what I mean by that is they will deliver improved emergency services by following us to receive real-time texts, pictures, video, and other data to enhance call interrogation, tiered response, and location, all of which directly correlates to better emergency response and ultimately saving lives. BWC, or body-worn camera. We are about to enter our pilot project, and that will commence this year in our 4th quarter. Obviously, if the board approves the pilot project, then eventually we will roll out that to all frontline officers, probably the 2nd, 3rd quarter of 2024. Everyone would agree that police accountability, community confidence, and public trust are paramount for any police service, And one of the ways we can enhance this trust is by being transparent about our actions with the community. Body-worn cameras will help us facilitate that while enhancing officer safety as well. In addition, during our public survey and developing our 2021-2024 strategic plan, 89% of the sample size group, which was 500 citizens from our municipality, supported body-worn cameras for our officers. 2 weeks ago, at our last board meeting, I presented a business case for the proposal and replacement of our ARV. And what I'm referring to when I say ARV is our Armored Rescue Vehicle. And that was approved by the board. The final agreement still has to be finalized with General Dynamics Land Systems Canada out of London, Ontario, but we hope to take possession this coming March. The advantages to having, and I'll show you a picture of it in the next slide. Once again, it's self-explanatory. We would utilize this asset in respect to person rescues, citizen evacuations, negotiations, barricaded persons, and responding to high critical incident situations such as a hostage situation, or when a search warrant is about to be conducted at a location where we know there is a high propensity for firearms or other weapons. Finally, the last one there, ALPRs, automated license plate readers. We were successful in applying and receiving last year approximately $700,000 from the provincial government in grant funding for this initiative. We will be equipping all of our cruisers with ALPRs, which provides the most effective and efficient source of detection for licensing and related infractions found operating on the roadways within our municipality, ultimately improving and enhancing roadway safety within our municipality. So there's a picture of some of the initiatives, some of the projects that we have on the go. So starting at the very top left-hand side of that collage of photos, obviously that's a picture that was obtained by one of our drones of our headquarters. Moving to the immediate right, that is an actual body-worn camera right in the center. To the far right is one of our BPU, Bike Patrol Unit officers. Moving back to the left, that is a picture of the current asset, Armored Rescue Vehicle, that we have purchased or we're in the process of obtaining. The only difference is it will not be that color, it will be black. Continuing on to the right, depending upon where you sit on the horseshoe, I guess, there's a picture of the 5 new auxiliaries that were just sworn in last month. Moving back to the left is a picture of a polygraph, and right at the bottom, unfortunately, I can't remove that bar at the very bottom, but it's just a road with an arrow pointing towards Next Generation 911, the future. So this slide just quickly represents the results obtained from one of the police budget priority questions from Oracle Poll Research, who we use to assist in developing our current strategic plan. And as you can see, over half, 62% of those 500 citizens that were surveyed would support an increase to the police budget in order to hire more officers, increase police visibility, and maintain the current level of service that we are providing. This slide quickly captures a review of our police budgets, increases and decreases over the last 15 years. So as you can see, we have been rather consistent trying to keep the increases in line with consumer price index inflation. I would add that this is not the highest increase. Unfortunately, it's not on the slide, but I know back in 2008, we actually had a 5% increase to our police budget. And last year, we received, as most of council knows, a 4.4% increase. However, the average increase, as you can see and depicted by that gray line, has been around 2.35% over the last 15 years, which is historically congruent and aligns with inflation. That being said, we all know that inflation is, what did it end the year at, 6.8, Gord? Okay, 6.8%. This is my final slide, members of council. And in my opinion, this slide says it all. And what I mean by that is this slide examines our 2023 budget request with our comparators for this year and what their respective boards and some councils have approved already. You can see that it ranges from the highest increase of 18% at the very bottom there for Brantford Police Service to the lowest increase of 3.30% for the Chatham-Kent Police Service. The average of the 12 police services is 7.1%, which is what I would expect, as it coincidentally is close to the inflation rate. However, we took it a step further by reducing our overall budget with further funding sources. This funding is directed to offset the costs associated to our direct cost provisions, but also our collective agreement salary increases and benefit enhancements. Subsequently, I would ask that you approve the 3.30% increase I am recommending here tonight. I can assure council our overall budget with no additional asks or extra officers is a bare bones request. And I know that Elwood from the Chatham Daily News has actually quoted me saying that. Although it is bare bones, it is still attainable while ensuring adequate and effective policing. And as per the Police Services Act, adequate and effective policing comprises of 5 components. It's crime prevention, law enforcement, assistance to victims, emergency response, and public order maintenance or management. As I said, there are no service reductions, and as a matter of fact, as presented here tonight, we have been able to provide several service level enhancements with some really unique and state-of-the-art initiatives, which all translates back to enhancing community safety and well-being. Finally, I would add that given the current economical state, inflation, local states of emergency, increases in our calls for service, increase to population and staffing issues, this budget meets council's direction, is fiscally responsible while improving equipment, safety support to our members, and enhancing services to the citizens of Chatham-Kent. Thank you, and I will certainly field any questions or concerns that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Crew?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief. From a police service board, we sent them back a few times to sharpen their pencils, and they did just that. They kept coming back with a little bit more savings, a little bit more being creative, and still having a police service that can serve our community the way we need to be served, with that community policing in mind and community safety and well-being. So congratulations, Chief and Deputy Chief. I just want to say that, how many new hires?
Auxiliaries?
Oh, no, please. Did we hire any police officers?
No.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear because there was a couple times sounded like you may have said that, but I was sure we didn't hire anyone. No. So I would like to, at this point, move the police service budget.
Seconded by Councillor Allen.
That's all I have to say. Thank you, Chief. I don't have any other questions. Very good presentation.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Crew. There were exactly 6 iterations until we got it to where the board was satisfied. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to declare a conflict on this one because I have a police contract, so.
Noted. Thanks. Councillor Sakachi?
Thank you, Chief, for the great presentation as well as the due diligence you did to try to bring us a bare bones budget. Chief, so without going into personal identifiable matters, a question that has come up with me significant amounts of time, I guess, correlation with the media release of the budget. There was also some releases about some paid suspensions that go on, and I just wanted you to reiterate to the public that this is not a council matter, that we're not able to identify that, we're not able to address that, and even you as chief are not able to do that. There has been some confusion with people saying that, as a municipality, we shouldn't be doing that, but I just was hoping that you have the platform just to kind of explain that a little bit, just to let everybody know that it has nothing to do with a council decision or a police chief decision.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Board Chair, to Councillor Sakachi. Actually, if I could get my presentation brought back up. Sorry. I had one more slide because given the current issues which have just unfolded over the last couple of days, certainly in respect to the Giaconelli matter, I suspected that there may be a question surrounding suspension without pay. So, is there? Oh, she's just trying to bring it back up. Okay. I do have a slide which addresses it, but I think I'll segue into the slide with oh, sorry, Judy. Okay. Yep, if we just go to the next slide. No, the next way. Nope, you're going back. Just go forward here. I think I got it. There we go. Perfect. I think everyone here would agree that the current police discipline system surrounding suspension without pay is archaic, and it simply no longer instills public trust, confidence, or transparency. It further puts officers, management, and the public through an unnecessarily procedurally laden process that takes far too long to complete, and it's just far too costly at the provincial and municipal levels. To your question, Councillor Sakachi, no, council nor the board. It is governed under the Police Services Act in respect to suspension without pay. As you can see and depicted in the slide, the only way the chief of police can suspend a person without pay is actually if those two boxes, the first two boxes, number 1 and number 2, are satisfied. So if an officer has been sentenced and having committed an offense and is incarcerated for a term of imprisonment, or the officer is in custody or on bail, subject to conditions that prevent the officer from performing the usual duties of a police officer. So unless those are satisfied, certainly number 1, I cannot suspend without pay. I must suspend with pay. Now, we are currently just drafting the regulations in regards to the new Comprehensive Ontario Police Services Act. And there are proposals in respect to changes to that particular section within the new Comprehensive Ontario Police Services Act. And one of the proposals is contained in box number 3 there. And that is the officer has been charged with the serious offense, and the offense was not committed in relation to the performance of the officer's duty, so they'd have to be off duty when they committed an offense. The chief of police is seeking the officer's dismissal right out of the gate. Termination is the likely outcome if the events leading to the charges were proven, and failure to suspend without pay would bring discredit to the reputation, basically bring our police service into disrepute. I can tell you this, that there are still issues that are under discussion surrounding the definition of number 1, what is a serious offense, which is defined, albeit in draft regulation right now, as all offenses under Canadian law that carry a possible jail sentence of 5 years or more. Well, members of council, in my opinion, that is far too high a bar. And what about serious professional misconduct offenses? That has not been covered off as well. And I'm referring to obviously those that occur off duty. So suffice it to say, there's still a fair amount of work that needs to be done in respect to this, but we're hoping that with the new act and the regulations contained within that act, there will be changes to specifically suspension without pay. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Chief. It was just, I think it was just better coming to you to clarify yourself. It's a lot more diligent that ways, and obviously a lot more details. My last question for you is, so you present us with a very good budget, and I just, wanted to see, like, did you entertain any, like, other options to ensure cost savings in the budget that maybe didn't, meet the criteria? Because I do feel that you guys, given our outliers, you've done a very good job at coming at a very manageable number. So I just wanted to see, like, how that kind of process played out, and if there was any kind of other additional options to ensure that we looked at everything, basically.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Board Chair, to Councillor Sakachi, thank you for the question. Excellent question. It's basically ensuring that we did do our due diligence, and I can assure Council we did, as I indicated to, well, certainly the Mayor and Councillor Crew can attest to, there were 6 iterations of the budget until the Board finally approved the one that is before you tonight. Having said that, one of those iterations, and I can't remember if it was probably within the first couple, because it was turned down pretty quickly, but we had recommended closure of 2 substations. We had recommended the closure of the Ridgetown Police Substation and the Tilbury Police Substation. Make a long story short, the board did not approve that. There was a savings, although not very much, but there was an additional savings. But as I indicated, the board denied it.
Thank you. I'll be definitely supporting this, and thank you, Chief Conn, and to the board, because I'd rather be supporting a number right now of 3.3% than losing any of our outlier and state substations. So I do appreciate the diligence that you guys did in the board and on the police aspect. Thank you.
Councillor McGarrell?
Thank you. Just a quick question. I know Marjorie asked about new hires, but did we lose any through retirement? Are we still operating in the same number of officers?
We are still operating. My authorized strength remains the same. However, I need to explain that a little bit. There is on paper your authorized strength, but boots on the ground may be a little bit different. I can share with council that currently we have 17 members off on some form of an operational stress injury. The vast majority PTSD. We did go to the board with a proposal which was approved by the board to backfill those officers, because we know that out of those 17 that are off on PTSD, the vast majority may never return. They may be diagnosed as permanently disabled. And if that occurs, then there's a whole process. We work with WSIB with vocational retraining. But the fact is that they're still shown on our books, but they're not actually out on the street. The board report requesting the additional 6 officers to backfill for that component of 17 was approved, and we have filled those positions.
Any other questions? Councillor Finn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the Chief. Just to clarify, Councillor Sakachi asked mine because I've received many calls over the last 2 weeks. But the armored vehicle and the polygraph position, I take it the armored vehicle will be like the command center a few years ago where it's paid for through your reserves?
Through you, Mr. Board Chair, Councillor Finn, exactly. It's actually going to be a replacement, and it's a life cycle replacement. As you know, Councillor Finn, our original armored rescue vehicle is antiquated. It's actually a 1990, so it's 33 years old, former Loomis Brinks truck is basically what it is. So it's way past its life cycle. And we have been working on this project for the last 5 years. Actually, Sergeant, now retired, Sergeant Paul Pomajma spearheaded it. Obviously, he's retired and we've picked up with it, but it's in collaboration with General Dynamics, and they're basically giving us an asset which could range anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million for a significantly reduced price in regards to it.
And with regards to the polygraph, that'll be like, I presume, the breath text, where you have somebody trained, but not for that position solely?
Actually, they will remain in CI. It'll be a detective constable. So that person, he will fulfill CI duties, responsibilities. In addition, he will be qualified as a polygraphist.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I did have a few questions, and this might be for you, Chief Connor, might be for the budget team. The increase of 3.3%, tax impact of 0.64%. We have, I think we might be the only place with area-rated policing. Is that increase shared equally amongst communities, or is it impact different communities differently, despite the fact service is the same across our municipality?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, last term of council, we did bring a report to council actually recommending a change, but that was turned down. So we do area rate police services more heavily to the urban areas. So the $1,127,450, it will be the same split that we have now between what we charge to the urban. I don't have the percentage in front of me, but if 65% of it's charged to the urban areas of this new budget request, that same percentage will be allocated to the urban areas.
Thank you, and to Chief Con, so any of that additional funding, do you distribute it based on that area rating? Do those that are paying a higher amount of the increase receive more of the service? Does that weigh into your decision on how you decide the increasing?
No, actually what we do, Mr. Board Chair, is we did an analysis, as I indicated in one of my slides, and we took a look at a bunch of variables. We looked at demographics, we looked at calls for service, volume and severity of the calls for service, and then took a look at our resources and assured that the resources are equally dispersed, where the vast majority of our calls for service and where the most severe calls for service are historically originating from. So, and that would be primarily, and that's why you see in the one slide where I showed the different three districts, so the North, Central, and South District, there are 14 zones or 14 beats. 6 of them are contained in Central, which is Chatham proper. 4 to the north, 4 to the south. And again, that equates back to that 65% of our calls for service come from Chatham proper.
Thank you. And will we have a discussion outside of the budget committee around area rating police services in this term of council? Are we expecting a report on that?
Thanks for the tough question. I think that's, well, really, you know, this is a new council. We haven't got 2-year strategic direction discussions. And so I would say to be determined, the pace, depending on what direction we receive from council.
Thank you. Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you, Chief Con. I'll call the vote.
Councillor Carmen McGregor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And all votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Thank you, members of council.
That's all the items on our agenda for tonight, but we'll go to Steve to discuss what we can expect for our next budget meeting and for an update.
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. So while I realize we're not getting into the operating budget tonight, just for the benefit of council and the public, I thought we'd go quickly through the example of how we plan to go through the operating budget, provide you with an example, and allow any feedback or any questions that you may have. So each division within the budget book will have a page highlighting all the budget requests within the 2023 budget. As we move through the operating budget, we will direct both council and the public on the page to turn to assist in following along. The details for each business case highlighted we found in the pages following the budget highlight summary. So using the example here of the Chatham-Kent Public Library, which is on page 158, you can see that there are a total of 7 budget requests. However, it's important to note that not only the description of the request, but also the total expenses and the total revenues. In this example, the first 3 items have the same total expense and revenue. So what this means is that the request is basically self-funded and therefore there's no tax impact on the budget. However, if you look at the next 3 items, you know a negative revenue and 2 expenses that have no matching revenues. So these items do have an impact on the tax increase. So that means if these 3 items were approved, they are currently in the 6.35%. So I just want to make that clear as we go through the budget. Like every division has a summary. And after each summary is the details of each of the business cases. However, when you're looking at it, it's very, very important to look at the total expenses and total revenues. If they match, it's self-funded. You may still want to visit that business case, but I just want to highlight that that has no tax impact.
Any questions on that formatting? We won't take any motions from the floor tonight, general motions. We'll get to those towards the end of budget. But if you have any specific questions about some budget items or requests for information that you'd like for the upcoming budget nights, now is a great time to ask for those. Obviously, you can email staff between now and the next budget evening as well to get that information in advance. Do we have any questions, any requests for information? Councillor Scotchy?
Just trying to, your last comment, sorry, Mr. Brown, just to understand better. So every time the matter comes up, you're gonna identify the page. Just to be very transparent with everybody, including my co-councilors, I'm having a very difficult time with this book, significant challenges with it compared to the last 4 years. So I'm finding I'm turning to pages as we're going, and it's hard to keep up. So are you going to identify the page number every time we go to that line item?
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. Yes, every line item we go to, we will identify the page number to assist both council and the public to follow along.
Because the book is beautiful, but it's just really hard to follow. Like, I do apologize, but that's just my comments.
Councillor Crew?
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Sakachi. Councillor Bondi and I were just saying, well, it's not just us older ones, thank God, the younger guys having trouble too. I was talking about Connor.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, when I'm looking at these lines in this, in the budget case, business case, and there's no revenue beside that, so that's saying there's a tax impact there when I'm looking at these lines. So if I'm looking without brackets, brackets means you're in the good?
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. So let's use, I guess, two examples. The overdue fines has brackets for revenue, and this is
Right.
probably a little bit hard because it's an accounting piece, but that's basically a reduction in revenue. So there is a tax impact for that item. But if you look at the life cycle for the RFID replacement, there's a $21,690 expense, no revenue. So yes, that $21,690 does have an impact on the tax.
Okay, so, and not that I want to do this, but if I wanted to save 21,690, I'd make a motion to remove that, and that would have a tax impact. Is that the same with all of them?
Every budget highlight as we go through, they'll all be the exact same. And like I said earlier, after each of the summaries, there's the details of each business case. So if you want to see what it is or any information, there's also the consequence of not moving forward with that request is also included within the business case. So there is all of that information, but yes, for each division, there is the summary, followed by the business cases, and then it just that's how the book flows through. After you get to about page 100, when you get to the CAO's area, then from there on in till the capital, it's that same philosophy.
Okay, I understood the summaries and things like that, but when I'm looking at, I didn't know what was new, what was added, it just, it's new. We gotta figure it out maybe.
I think for next year, as we've learned sort of this is the first year with this change, we are learning things as we go along. We'll probably try to put a net tax impact so that it's very clear in one column what the tax impact is for council. But this is a new process this year, and we are learning, and we're trying to.
That's okay, we'll get through it.
I was just going to add to that as well. As we are a little bit ahead of time tonight, and we have the time, Steve and I will stick around after the budget if anybody wants to go through more examples or of how it's going to work next week, so that you're prepared. So we'll stick around after we close tonight if anybody wants one-on-one assistance on or go through a few pages for examples.
Councillor Story?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two quick questions on process. I assume that we're using the previous council term strategic plan as our lens to how we're making decisions this term, since we haven't done any of that yet for this term.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct. As we started actually forming this budget through the summer, we were working with the directions of the last council. And that's just a matter of the elections in October, and yet we have to approve a budget. In fact, we're late already, right? Like, we should be approving a budget before you start a year. And so that's as we move to the multi-year budget, which we'll be doing next fall. This spring, this council will be forming its strategic directions, and staff will go away and do their business plans and their budget requests for the multi-year budget. The concept there is that it will be a 4-year budget to not only do the remaining 3 years of this term of council, but also set the direction for the first year of the incoming council next time. So that's what the advantage of a multi-year budget is, so you get elected, not know anything or know little about the operations of a municipality and are forced to approve a $400 million budget in your first couple months. So that's sort of why council voted to transition to that new way.
Okay, good thing it's a good document. Thanks, everybody, from last term for doing that. And second question, just the order of things the next couple of nights. The requests that we heard the other night, for the community asks, I guess, for lack of a better term, are those the only two we are reviewing, and when are we doing that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll go through the operating budget request is where we're starting on Tuesday night, and we'll see how far we get. Once we're done those, we do have a closed session discussion scheduled for approximately 8:30, 8:45 on Tuesday. And once we're completed that, we come back into open likely on Wednesday at 6 p.m. We'll have, and that's when we get to the general motions from the floor, which will also include dealing with those two requests.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Caniff?
Mr. Chair, could you just update us with where we stand? You might have been planning to do that. Everyone's, I'm sure, is eagerly waiting to hear that number, where we're at now.
5.58%.
Thank you.
5.58%. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, as a reminder, we're back Tuesday night, so to the public, you can submit your deputations before 3 o'clock on Tuesday to be read to council or to come in person. And then I'll need a mover and a seconder for the following motion. This session of the Budget Committee meeting will recess until 6 o'clock on Tuesday, January 31st. As per the public notice bylaw, Chatham-Kent Council hereby gives public notice of its intention to hold public meetings and adopt the 2023 budget immediately following receipt of a recommended budget from the Chatham-Kent Budget Committee. The Budget Committee also gives public notice of the need to meet in closed session at any time during the budget deliberation process as permitted by the Municipal Act 2001. Moved by Councillor Finn, second by Councillor Bondi. Any opposed? Seeing none, see you on Tuesday.